Please lie on your back. And while you're lying there and thinking, what ATMs might we possibly do to kind of link all ATMs we've done this segment? Where might we be going next? I just thought I'd pass on a metaphor that actually it was Russell Delman. I remember it very distinctly in my training. That for me gave me a little bit of encouragement. In fact, by outward appearances, if I'm not presuming too much, you seem to be engaged in a way with your learning that maybe this little bit of encouragement, actually I've got two things, might not be necessary, or maybe there's a time when it will. And it was a metaphor. So lie on your back. So I'm just going to tell you a kind of paint a scene, an image for you. It's about learning and how learning happens. And it's not scientific and it's not neurological. So, has everyone here experienced fog? Fog? Yep. Okay. So you could imagine that you're standing on a pier on the end of a bay or a beach or the ocean, and it's early morning and it's really foggy. And you know that you're expecting some friends on a boat to arrive on that pier in the not too distant future. But you can't see a thing. It's damp, it's moist, its visibility is just a few feet in front of you. But while you wait, you've got there early because you're excited. While you're waiting, you know, dawn comes, there's a bit of light, the fog's still thick, but it's a bit lighter. And then the fog clears a little bit and you imagine you see something. And then a moment later, you think you know you imagined it. You didn't see it. It's gone. And then the sun's coming up somewhere. It's getting a little lighter. The fog starts to recede a little bit. And you can see a little into the distance and you see a shape. And you know you're expecting something. But is that the boat that's bringing your friends? And then the fog covers it over again. And so over time, this happens again and again, that the fog clears a little, recedes, gradually it's receding. You see a little bit more of the boat. Or something that you can put a piece and a piece together so you recognize that that's the boat with your friends that's coming. And then it disappears again, because fog has a way of doing that, of drifting, of thickening, of separating. And then gradually, as the temperature gets warmer, the fog starts to lift away from the ocean and dissipate, and you recognize more and more of the boat that you're expecting until you can see it clearly. And that can be our experience of learning, especially when it's something that is, has a very different paradigm than what we've known all our life. So when you feel the fog lifting a little bit, appreciate that and know that there's more clarity, more visibility, more insight to come. So please lie on your right side. Could you bring your left arm towards the ceiling, make it a soft, long arm, and raise your left leg towards the ceiling also, so that the sole of your foot, as much as possible, you could do the other side to start with if you wanted to, Ruth. So you're organizing yourself to have the sole of your foot pointing towards the ceiling, and your arm, your left arm and your left leg more or less parallel. That means your knee won't be pointing down to the floor. So your knee can be bent, but your leg is in the air as long, if possible, knee bent, but your intention is to aim your foot to the ceiling. And now we have a sea of arms and legs. So just notice the relationship of your arm and your leg in space, and then pause a moment. Bring them down and rest. You're going to do a lot of them, spend a lot of time with them in the air, so you might want to rest. It will get easier and easier though. The fog will clear. And if the fog's a bit thicker, I know that you've got a fabulous system established where you've got a study buddy, and you've got a study group, and you've got a learning group. I know you've got lots of groups. Please bring your left arm and your left leg towards the ceiling again, sensing the relationship between them, the length of your arm, the shape of your leg, and begin to move your arm forwards and your leg backwards, just a little bit, tiny amount, so that you might begin to assess or notice whether they're moving the same amount. So you want them to move the same amount from the starting position in the opposite direction, and then pass through the middle. And as they pass through the middle, that's your starting position, they each go in the other direction. So both your arm and your leg are moving in opposite directions at the same time. So notice if they're moving at the same rate. Or do you move your arm faster and further than your leg? Or your leg faster and further than your arm? And how do you organize yourself on your right side to do this? Can you feel a change in contact of your right side with the floor? So you rest as soon as it feels difficult or you feel like you need to increase the effort, and then you come back. So stop a moment, everybody, and think it through. How do you think it through? Do you feel it? Do you visualize it? Do you imagine the kinesthetic sensations of what it would be like to move your arm and leg? You could think now that you've got the same vertical clock, but they're moving, one of your limbs is moving to 1 o'clock as the other limb is moving to 11 o'clock. Is this what you imagined when I suggested how might all the ATMs come together? Wouldn't suspect so. But maybe it'll be a little bit more apparent, the connection, as we develop this lesson with the next lesson. Okay, please bring your arm and leg up towards the ceiling. Again, same side. And now move your arm and your leg downwards together, footward, and upwards, headward. So before we were moving in front and behind or left and right. Now we're moving your arm and your leg downward and upward. And is it possible to keep them more or less parallel with one another? And are you lying on your side? Are you still on your side? Or are you rolled onto your back? Now, if you know you've rolled onto your back, that's great. But the intention is to try and do this on the side for now, because it mobilizes the center of you in a very different way, and it requires that you start to find a little bit of stability in an inherently unstable position and movement. Pause a moment. Now, the next time you come back to the same position, could you imagine that you have a stick between your hand and your foot? And as you move them both upward in the direction of your head and downward in the direction of your feet, that you keep the stick between them. So that's a use of an image that can assist people to pay attention to themselves and their location in space in a way that they might not otherwise. And your breathing continues. So it's not bending your knee and bending your elbow. Your arm is long. And as much as possible pointed towards the ceiling to begin with. So it would help if you lifted, if you're on your side, could you lift your head a little bit as your leg and arm go downward? Could you maintain the same angle that you start with between your arm and your head? That means the angle between your arm and your left ear doesn't change. So it might restrict how far you move. Great. It's nice to see everybody tune into that. That's what happens when you're teaching ATM. When the students begin to get it, everybody looks a little more like they're doing a similar thing, maybe in slightly different ways. Rest a moment. Please raise your left leg and left arm again, lying on your right side. This time, put your left hand underneath your head so that your right cheek rests in the palm of your right hand. Sorry, I said left, didn't I? You see, I'm just checking that you're all awake. So place your right cheek in your right hand. I'm correcting myself. Your left arm and leg are towards the ceiling. And imagine a stick between your leg and your arm. And that as they move downwards, your right hand helps your head maintain the same angle between your arm and your head. And the stick is between your foot and your hand. Do you hear the banging of sticks? I do, a few. So can you lift your head with your right hand? Maybe you could even come up on your right elbow. So the difficulty here, there's a few difficulties. There's one, to maintain your balance on your side. Two, to keep your left arm and left leg raised towards the ceiling. And three, to find a way of using your torso where the left side of your ribs are being asked to fold and the right side on the floor is being asked to fan out. That's it. And most of us don't use this movement really well, this side bending movement. I can't hear you. Depends if you're on your side. So you're on the back of your right side or you're on the side of your right side? I would soften the constraint of your left leg. Bend your knee a little. Come back on your side. Come more on your side. Now, the movement, as your foot and your hand move footward with a stick between them, your right hand is going to help your head. But it's not about your head. It's not about straining your neck. It's about what you feel through the middle of yourself. And it is asking a very specific movement, not of your neck, of your spine, the length of your spine, particularly of how the ribs can close down on the left side and open on the right side. Okay, leave it. Rest on your side. That's it. That was it. So it doesn't matter how small, how big it is, but it's learning to find or reveal something that you're doing. Again, I'm going to quote Larry Goldfarb. I may not have it, I'll be paraphrasing. A habit is something that you've learned to do, that you've forgotten that you're doing, and you've forgotten that you do it. So that's why it's a scotoma. That's why it's a blind spot. It's outside of our awareness. So in awareness through movement lessons, your attention is being guided through the instructions, both about your learning, about the process of learning, the process of attention, and guiding you between those in the direction of what is likely to make it easier for you. But sometimes, one, we can't distinguish between what's harder and what's easier because we just do it. And two, sometimes it's not possible for us. So try that again. Bring your left arm and your left leg towards the ceiling. Put your right hand underneath your right cheek. So lie your head down to begin with. That's it. Imagine that stick between your hand and your foot. And move your arm and your leg footward and then headward. So when they go footward, to keep the stick between them and to not change the angle between your head and your arm, your right hand can help. And you're looking for simultaneous, really tracking the movement of your head, what you're doing with your right arm, what you're doing along the length of your spine and your limbs in space. And size doesn't matter. And rest a moment. On your side. Bring your arm and leg towards the ceiling. Put your right hand under your head. And this time move your arm and leg towards one another and away from one another. Notice the pathway through space. And have your head moving, maintaining the same relationship with your arm. So that angle doesn't change. Now, keep your head on the floor and begin to move your left arm and your left. Okay, rest. Now, let's take a rest. Could you roll over onto your back? Lengthen your legs for a moment. and your arms. Just notice if you sense a difference between your two sides, the way you're lying on the floor. So one thing I suggest to you is that when you roll over onto your back, that you avoid doing little movements or adjustments, because often then in doing that, you miss the organization that may be present, that may have shifted neurologically, the tonus of the muscles that may have shifted from what you've just been doing. So it could be that you don't notice any change. You think what's changed, or what you might notice is what happens from those little movements that you do. You know, and so often we rearrange our clothes or readjust our arms or our legs or ourselves in some way. And it can be a distraction from the change, or an avoidance, or just simply one of those things that we don't know that we're doing, that we've forgotten that we do. Lying on your back, how would you recreate the position, the configuration you were just in on your back? Of course, you wouldn't be lying in the same way as you are now. You'd have to change where your left arm and left leg was, and maybe where your hand was. And what would your right leg be doing? So when you were lying on your right side, your right leg was bent. So your left arm and left leg would be on the floor to the left of you. So if the floor was this, imagine the ceiling's changed. The ceiling is a vertical wall to the left of you now. And you're pointing your foot and your arm, your leg, more or less parallel to the left. Yeah, interesting. So come back onto your right side. Raise your left foot, left leg, left arm to the ceiling. So now the ceiling is where in relationship to yourself? It's to the left of you and it's above you. So could you now make the ceiling, imagine that the ceiling is the vertical wall on the bathroom side of this room, and roll yourself and lie in that configuration. Yeah. So now you're on your back. Well, so we want to be on the back, the legs to the side, the right knee's bent, the knees pointing to this. So your leg is in the same your right leg is in the same orientation as it was when you're lying on your right side. Yes. So now you're on your back. Are your arm and leg in the same relationship to one another as they were on your right side? Same relationship to each other. So come back onto your side and check the distance. Raise your arm and leg to the ceiling. Wait. Raise your arm and leg to the ceiling. Sense the distance between your elbow and your knee, your hand and your foot. How parallel are because that's the kind of the direction we're going in. Are they from one another? And then roll onto your back. So you will now be on your back. Pardon? You will now be on your back with the ceiling, as if the ceiling's a wall on the left side of the room. Yeah. Okay, we got there. On the floor. Your arm and your leg are on the floor. Now, most people, this is an example of how we lose ourselves when we change the orientation. It could be seen as an example of how we tend to lose our orientation, our sense of relationships when we change the orientation, how much our learning is context dependent. So in this position, just for a moment, put your right arm by your side. Your left arm and your left leg are out to the side on the floor. Okay. Oops. Well, now maybe you don't have to be like that. Maybe you could put them down on the floor now and be on your back. Yeah. Whoops, you're going to have a falling tower. In this position, could you move your arm and your leg, keeping them on the floor a little bit in opposite directions? So move them away from one another and towards one another. Does have any similarity to something you did in the last ATM? It's a little different. Your left leg is bent. And now move them in the same direction. Downwards together and upwards together. And really look for that, for moving them simultaneously. Exactly together. Same speed, same range, which isn't possible. It's impossible to begin with unless you pay attention to your entire self. So you sense the space between your legs, the space between your left arm and your left leg, the space between your toes, the length of your spine. So we're moving in the same direction. And what do you do with your head? Could you put your right hand underneath your head? So you rest the back of your skull in the palm of your right hand. And as you move both your arm and leg downwards, so what you're doing will be influenced by where you start. So when we're on the back, the foot was towards the ceiling. The ceiling is now this wall over here. So that means your leg is as long and almost perpendicular to your torso as it was when you were lying on your side. And your arm and your leg are roughly parallel to one another. Now move them, keep the distance between them the same, and move them a little bit downwards, and feel how could you organize yourself to help with your right hand in a way that made it a little easier to move them downwards together, not far, because the floor again is a constraint. And this is demanding something of your ribs on the left side, a folding of the ribs on your left side. But it's a constantly changing relationship because the floor is there to constrain it, if not the extra constraints of your organization. So what else could you do through the length of your torso to help this movement? Would it help if you rounded a little? And which part of your spine might you round? Okay, think about moving them towards one another and away from one another now. Hand under your head. Yep. Yes. Well, your right hand is going to help. It might lift your head away from the floor a little bit. But you're finding the coordination of your limbs, your entire self. You have an idea of the direction. It's not something you may have done in the last 20, 30, for some of us 40 or more years. So how do you learn? And what demands are you placing on yourself? What expectations? Could you attune yourself to your own comfort and a sense of lightness and ease? Okay, rest a moment. Lie on your back. Please come back to the same position, configuration. Right hand behind your head, left arm, left leg on the floor to the left of you. And continue to move your arm and your leg towards one another, finding ways that your right hand can help make you more adaptable in your chest, in your spine, make it easier on your breathing. Could your left hand move in the direction of your left leg as your left leg comes towards your left hand? And could you touch? Could your right hand touch your leg somewhere, your left leg, your knee? Try and keep them on the floor. So you do not need to keep the constraint of your leg being straight. Let your knee bend a little bit. And see, where could they meet? Could you lift your head and think of moving your head in an arc through space? So it's just not your knee coming towards your hand, it's your whole leg, but your knee might be leading if your leg is bent. And then hold on somewhere. So it means you're probably going to bend your elbow if your leg is bent, and hold your knee with your left hand, or your calf, or your ankle, or your foot, whatever part of your leg you can reach. And now keep your head lifted a little so that you can move your leg and your left leg and left arm downwards and upwards together. So you don't really want to hold behind the kneecap, because the idea is to have the leg comfortably long. So you can hold your pants or the shin, but if you actually hold below, you're bending your leg. Yeah? So now when your hand and your leg are connected, they really are moving simultaneously, unless you feel your hand sliding on your leg or you feel your elbow bending. Are you breathing? Or did that go by the by? Okay, please leave it. Rest on your back. Come back to the same position. Left arm, left leg out to the side, right foot standing somewhere, right hand behind your head. If it's comfortable, your left hand holding your left leg somewhere. So don't do this. Think about it. But not actually, you can hold below the kneecap if that's the easiest place. But if you hold below your kneecap, to those of you who are holding behind the kneecap, below the kneecap, listen, the leg is straightish out to the side. That's it. How would you come back onto your back, holding your left leg without heaving it away from the floor? Think about it. Think about it. What would you move first? What would happen in your right hip joint with your pelvis along the length of your back in order for you to roll back onto your right side with your left arm and leg towards the ceiling? And so even if you can, don't hold your foot, hold your ankle. Or your shin, or your lower trouser leg, or some part of you. Okay, and go back again. So some people have made it look easy. How were you breathing? And if it feels too easy, not that I want to make it, impossible for you, try and fold. When you next roll back onto your left side, fold yourself a little more so that you hold lower down your leg, which demands what of your torso? What shape do you need to make? Banana. Great. And then that banana needs to be kind of present as you roll back. And if you're in that shape, can you feel what's happening along the front of yourself with your abdominal muscles? And your breathing's adapting moment by moment? Great. Okay, leave it. Take a rest on your back. Please lie again on your right side. Direct your left arm and left leg towards the ceiling so they're perpendicular to the floor. And just notice, is your leg any more perpendicular or straighter than it was to begin with? And see what it's like to move your arm forwards and your leg backwards. Your arm towards the floor in front of you and the leg towards the floor behind you. But you can't. So don't. But just think about the speed and the distance. So opposite directions. And then the same direction. It's not about going to the floor in front of you, but rolling a little bit towards your back and then feeling, how could you lose yourself? You might. How could you use yourself to think about pushing your foot upwards towards the ceiling as you come back onto your side? So it's as if your leg can rotate around its axis and the hip joint, that's it. But you can be a little softer in the leg. Yep. And then back. So Yep. And then forwards. That's it. Softer in the knee, softer in the knee. There. Yep. Backwards and forwards. So it can feel a bit like a screwing pump action when you find it. But keep your leg soft or it gets even harder. That's the direction. Just keep your leg a little softer, softer. Bend your knee. Yes, you certainly will be doing something through the center of yourself. Okay, so roll, lift them towards the ceiling. No, back onto the side. That's it. And now, look how this takes you down, down, and back up. Ah, so if you'd like to see the R, just have a look here. Then you see that Helen's rolling towards her back, and then, whoops, that's a stiffening of your leg. So keep your knee soft. Yep, there. Let your hip joint lower a little bit. Now come forward, turn your leg, and reach up towards the ceiling. That's it. There. That's all right. It'll come. So there's this twisting around the axis of the leg that can help the movement. That can help you come back onto your side and even think that your arm and leg are getting a little longer. Do you remember? I think you did this lesson. Oh, and what was that? She can hold her head up. Yeah, I did. So try and find your hip joint. We did so much in the first week about finding the hip joints while we were making these transitions through space. Great. Now I'm seeing this differentiation coming in around the room. So your right leg is bent. Your right leg is bent. You start on your side and your right leg is bent. Yeah, that's where we are. We're on the side and you're just going a little bit towards your back. There and there. There. That's it. Okay, rest on your back. Could you roll over and lie on your left side? And take a moment just to think through what we did on the other side. Recall the sensation of lifting your arm and leg towards the ceiling, finding where they were in space, sensing how your underneath side could support you, what you needed to do with your head, neck, and your whole spine to make yourself comfortable. And then we began by moving them in opposite directions a little bit. The same distance, the same amount. A little bit in the same direction, forwards and backwards. And then we had the hand under the head and moved the arm and the leg with a stick between them, downwards and upwards. And feeling how we could help our head assist the organization through the length of our spine and chest. So bring your left arm, right arm and your right leg towards the ceiling. Put your left hand wherever you like to begin with. And so your arm and leg are more or less parallel as is comfortable, and begin to move them in opposite directions. So as your arm is going forwards, your leg is going backwards relative to yourself. And you're listening. How can you attend to these moving limbs in an unusual configuration and track them? And then organize and coordinate them so they both go in the same amount, same distance, at the same speed, which means you need to have some sense of stability on your left side and control through the center of yourself. And then move them a little in the same direction, both forwards together and both backwards together. Forwards towards the floor in front of you a little bit, and then up towards the ceiling, and then backwards a little, as if you were going to take them to the floor to the right of you. When you're coming forwards, can you feel how your left hip joint is closing? The left side of you is rolling on the floor. And when you're going backwards, feel what happens between your thorax and your pelvis, changing shape of the ribs on the left with the floor. And when does your left knee begin to lift away from the floor? What shape is your lower back making? Okay, rest on your side. So do you think this is a more active lesson? One where you have to use your attention in slightly different ways? Finding out about your spatial awareness, where your body parts are in space. So now put your left hand underneath your head and bring your right arm and leg back up towards the ceiling. And begin to explore, just small to begin with, moving your arm and leg with a stick between them, a little bit downwards together and upwards together, headward and footward, maintaining the angle, the relationship between your head and your shoulder. And anytime you feel like you begin to shake a little, or you feel a strain, pause a moment and come back. And now move them up in opposite directions. That means your hand and foot move towards one another and away from one another. And your left hand helps your head maintain the same relationship between your right ear and your right shoulder. That angle stays the same. So your head follows your arm. And when you're really focusing on maintaining that relationship, do you hold your breath? Or are you doing the green light? Maybe it's a green-yellow. Okay, please rest a moment on your back. Please come back to the same configuration. Again, this time you can have your left hand under your head. Find the distance between your arm and leg that's comfortable. close to parallel, and begin to roll both together. Move both together in the same direction. Backwards. So if you think of that vertical clock, 12 o'clock you're starting at, you're going towards 1 o'clock, and then back to 12 and to 11 o'clock, back through 12, and each time go a little bit further. So you're trying to, without falling, move towards 2, back to 12, through to 10, and back, feeling the changing contact of yourself with the floor, and looking all the time to making it easier and easier. Feel how as you roll towards, with your limbs going towards 1 or 2 o'clock on the clock. It's good. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I know. How your pelvis is moving through space in contact with the floor. And if your left leg doesn't resist, your pelvis, as it turns, pulls your left leg in a way that the knee comes away from the floor and can come to stand on the sole of the foot as your right arm and your right leg keep traveling towards the floor to the right of you. The next time you get close to 3 o'clock, could you stay there? You may find you need to bend your left leg more, bring your foot towards you. If it's difficult, you can even bring your left leg over your abdomen, but can you find a way to rest with your right arm and right leg long on the floor as if the ceiling is on the tea coffee wall side of the room? And if you've got that configuration that you had, your left foot will be standing, your left knee will be towards the ceiling, and your arm and leg are long out to the side. So begin to move first of all, your arm and your leg in the same direction, a little downwards on the floor and upwards, downwards relative to you, footward, headward. And feel how can your left hand help? Does it help to lift your head a little bit at some point? And what does that lifting of your head enable through the length of your spine, through your chest, your thoracic vertebra, in your lower back? At the moment, they're same direction, arm and leg in the same direction. But now you could begin to move them in the opposite direction. So as your hand moves towards your leg's moving towards your hand. How can you fold, particularly on your right side that's in contact with the floor, your ribs? Does it help to breathe out or to breathe in? Next time your hand and towards one another, close to one another, could you stay there? Let your left leg rest down on the floor, but stay on your right side. You see, how is it to rest there? And what's the relationship between your right hand and your right leg? Can your hand is your hand somewhere near below your knee, near your shin, near your ankle. But you're not lying in a fetal position. Your right leg is lengthened out the front of you as much as is comfortable. Yep. Okay. Could you begin to explore what you could do to roll back onto your back, holding your leg? So you get hold of your leg somewhere, your trouser leg, could be your top of your sock if you've got long socks on, or your shin. Really pay attention. Where do you feel the changing contact with your right side and your back as your right leg comes away from the floor? Would lifting your head help? When you think, you remember the very first day we did rolling from the side to the back. And we're looking at that pattern of opening the distance between your ribs and your pelvis. So at the back, we did a little bit more of that this week in FI. So your left foot is there. Yep, right hand's holding right trousers, ankle, whatever. Could you think that you had a belt on and I came along, and at the very middle, I got hold of your belt and just pulled it downwards and backwards relative to your front and downwards relative to the floor. Does that mobilize you in a different way? Okay, rest on your back for a moment. And who's having a birthday in here today? They're all singing your happy birthday. Could you raise both of your arms, both of your legs towards the ceiling, lying on your back? Spread your legs. Have your arms in the same direction as your legs a little bit. So you feel the relationship between your left arm and your left leg, your right arm and your right leg. And could you begin to organize yourself to roll from your back to the right side with your arms and legs long like this? Keeping this, that's it. And then when you get to your right side, lift your left arm and your left leg away from your right. Coming back onto your back, feeling the pull to your right leg, and keep going across onto your left side. So you're rolling across your back with your arms and your legs long as comfortably possible. Feeling what can you mobilize through the middle of yourself to make your limbs feel lighter and lighter? Can you feel how your back, how you could use your back? So some people, if you go across your back with your back arched, then you're going, the point of contact between your pelvis and the floor is very small, and it's down near your sit bones, so you're not rolling across the rounder part of your sacrum. So if you think about really mobilizing, using your abdomen, your abdominal muscles in a way, when you start to go from your side to your back, that you round your back backwards, that you shorten through the front of you. That means your chest needs to change shape, not resist the action. So have your arms towards the ceiling more. I know you, so they're parallel with your thighs. Yeah. So there you were trying to be parallel with your lower legs. And just see if that makes any difference. Watch out for your neighbors. What's the timing like between your arms and your legs? Can they move more or less simultaneously? Right arm, right leg together, left arm, left together. Now, you're going to try and go a little faster because momentum can help, but that means you need to be going in the same direction as your neighbors. It means you need to think about your timing, their timing, and the direction you're going in. And now it looks like synchronized swimming from here. So let them be wide apart, as wide apart as you can. Yeah. And then use the momentum. Use the momentum, but keep taking your arms in the directions that you want. Otherwise, it gets harder. So they're not going overhead. They're going right and left. Keep taking leftward, leftward. I'm talking to somebody. Leftward, 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 leftward. So the moment where it gets difficult, it's like you lose a bit of the image of your action and intention of where you're going. So there's a moment of stuckness because inertia, because some part of you, devil, is going in the opposite direction and you haven't detected it yet. That's great. Okay, leave it, rest on your back. Notice how you sense yourself lying now. Laughing, that's good. Your relationship with the floor. How you feel your back now, sense your back, your arms. And if one feels like dancing, you could go and join the upstairs at lunchtime. But if not, see how you could use your rolling to roll yourself to the side and bring yourself up to sitting. And then up to standing. Moment to notice yourself in standing. And you're walking. And we'll take lunch and come back at 1:55.